All right, this video is going to go over hyperbolas. Let's go ahead and get started. These are the two equations that you need to know. The thing that I would say about these equations is notice A is always first, okay? In the, like on an ellipse, A could be over here, but not on a hyperbola. It has to come first. So whichever one of these, notice like how x minus h squared is positive and this y minus k squared is negative. Whichever one's positive has the A under it. So this is what it would look like the other way. Now notice that your HK, your H is always attached to the X regardless. Okay, so keep that in mind as well. Now, what a hyperbola looks like is essentially like two parabolas going oppo from each other. All right, so this is what a horizontal hyperbola would look like. If it was vertical, it would look like this. Now they also have this like a center, and they have dots on the inside for the focus. And then they'll also have asymptotes. And you'll have to find all of this information. So let's dive into a couple. Okay, I know my numbering off to the side is weird. That's for my students, so just get over it. Here we go. First one, x squared over 9 minus y squared over 25 equals 1. Okay, just looking at this equation, this right here tells me it's a horizontal hyperbola. Now, there's no shifts. So that means the origin or the center is at the origin. And so basically what you have to do here is first find the vertex of the hyperbola. So you really need to find this green dot and this green dot, which means you need to know this distance and this distance. Well, that distance is A. So like looking at this is A squared. It came first. So A is 3. So that means these are at 3, 0 and negative 3, 0. Okay, now that I've found that, I would probably try to go find the focus next. And your focus isn't too difficult to do. All you have to do for your focus is go, I'll actually write it in black and keep it up there because it's rather important. Your focus is always a squared plus b squared equals c squared. It's like Pythagorean theorem. So really, if you think about it, all you have to do is take this number plus this number and then root it. So for our focus here, it would be 9 plus 25 under a root. So that's root 34. So that means the coordinates of the focus are they're moving left, right. So they're affecting the x value. So I would put the focus at plus minus root 34, 0, like that. Okay, the next thing that you have to go get is the equation of the asymptote. This. We use orange, it'll stick out a little bit better. This. And there's one that goes like this. Now to do this, there's one more equation you need to know. And it goes y minus k equals plus minus, it's either a over b or it could be b over a. And I'll explain. And then x minus h. Okay, the way you know which one to choose, either A over B or B over A, it's like slope. It has to be the y over the x. Y over x. So you have to go look at the equation. And you look at which letter's under the y. Well, that's B, because B is 5. So in this scenario for my asymptote, it would be y minus k. Well, I'm at the origin anyways, so my hk is 0, 0. So it's going to be like y minus 0 equals. Okay, I need b over a because I need y over x. So it'd be 5/3 plus minus 5 over 3. And then x minus 0. So it'd be like y equals plus minus 5/3 x. That's the equation of the asymptote. And then once I was there, I'm essentially done. I found my asymptote. I found my focus. I found my vertices. And I drew a graph. So that's all me as a teacher would be looking for. All right, let's keep moving. Okay, let's look at number 2. Y squared over 25 minus x squared over 9 equals 1. Okay, if I was approaching this problem, the first thing I would look for is if it was vertical or horizontal. This one has y squared first. That means it is vertical. There are no shifts, so my center is at the origin. So it's going to look something like this. All right. Now, green dot, I need to go get. Green dot is your vertex. You get your vertex by knowing this distance. And that distance is A. And A is 5. So that means my vertices, they're moving up and down. So they're affecting my y value. So the plus minus 5 goes there. Those are my vertices. Now the next thing I would get would probably be the blue dot, which is my focus. And remember, to get focus, you just run a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So it's the same thing. You're just running a squared plus b squared equals c squared. You'll get c equals root 34. So in terms of the actual coordinates, again, they're vertical, so they're going on the y values. It'd be plus minus root 34. Okay, and then basically the last thing I need is this asymptote and this asymptote. And to get that, I'm going to use this equation. And so I'd be like, okay, y minus k equals, now I stop and I think, okay, do I use a over b or b over a? Well, I need y over x for slope, essentially. So a over b. So this one, and remember, b's not 9, b is 3. So it would look like this, 5 over 3. Just don't forget your plus minus. And then x minus h, which is 0. So my final equation for asymptote would be y equals plus minus 5/3 x. And then I'd be essentially done after I had this information right here. Okay, moving right along. To number 9. X minus 1 squared over 4 minus y plus 2 squared over 25 equals to 1. Okay, if I was approaching this problem, the first thing I would think about is if it was vertical or horizontal. This one, the x squared came first, so this is going to be horizontal. Now I'd also need to go get my center. Your center is at your HK, which is, you need to change both of these. So the center is at +1, -2. So 1, -2. Cool. All right, next. This is a horizontal one. So it's going to be opening something like this and this, but I need to know that distance. I need to know this distance to my vertex to open it up. Well, that distance is A, and A squared is sitting right there. So A is 2. So 1, 2 to the right, and 1, 2 to the left. And so it would open something like this. All right. So now that I have that, I'd probably go get my focus, which is going to be some blue dot here and here. But to do this, I need to know this distance. Well, that distance is C, and you get that by running A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So that'd look like this. 4 plus, for my focus, 4 plus 25 equals C squared. So C equals root 29. All right, so in order to answer that, sorry, I paused it for a second because I was looking at this problem. I wrote this number down wrong. So if you're one of my students wondering about that, I'm sorry. We're going to stick with 25 though. All right, but anyways, once you know it's root 29 away, in order to answer this, it's moving left and right. So it's affecting your x value. So you take your center and you'd be like, okay, it's affecting the x value. So it's attached to that plus minus root 29 comma -2. This is where my focus would be. Okay, so I got my vertices, I got my focus. I guess I never wrote the coordinates for the vertices. They would be the center, which was at 1 comma -2. But they were a distance away, so plus -2 on that x value because they're moving left and right. All right, so I got my vertices, I got my focus. Now I just need to go get this, the asymptotes. So it's y minus k, so y plus 2 equals. This one, you need y over x. That's going to be b over a. So 5 halves plus minus 5 halves. And then x minus h. And I would be okay with my students just leaving this equation like this. So that's how you would do that problem. Sorry about the wrong number. Okay, next up. This is where it gets kind of tricky. Now, luckily for you, it's very, very similar to an ellipse. Number 13. You've got 9x squared minus y squared minus 36x minus 6y plus 18 equal to 0. All right, so if you remember an ellipse, the first thing we did was we grouped the x's and the y's to make it look like this. All right, now you're going to have to double complete the square again, but you need to first GCF. And you might be looking at this y squared thinking, oh, I don't need to GCF there. Yes, you do. You have to GCF a -1 out. So it's going to look like this. Then you GCF a -1 out and call it y squared plus 6y. Then you got your plus 18 equal to 0. Okay, now comes the double complete the square part. It would look like this. Okay, now comes the redistribute part. So it would look like this. Okay, Now, right here, that's what always gets everybody. When you redistribute that -1, it changes that sign on that second number. So keep that in mind. That's the one that everybody misses. Okay, now I would kind of clean it up a little bit by combining like terms. Okay. Now I'd send the 9 over. Then you want to divide by 9 because you want this thing equal to 1. So my final equation would look something like this. Well, I'm going to have to reduce. So hold on. Okay, I would get here, and then I would reduce like 9 over 9 to be 1 over 1. So because you want a 1 right here, you don't want a lead coefficient there. So final answer would look like this. X minus 2 squared over 1 minus y plus 3 squared over 9 equal to 1. Just like that. Again, the part that everybody gets wrong is right here. When they redistribute the negative, it's going to change this sign. So just keep that in mind. All right, now you're going to have to be able to graph all this and find everything, all the information about it. So I'd start with the center. The center would be at 2, -3. So I'd start there. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Now that I have that, I would realize that this is a horizontal hyperbola, and my a value is 1. So that means I go 1 left, 1 right to find my vertices. Something like that. Okay, now I'd probably go get my focus next. Let's go ahead and, before I forget, write the vertices. So they're moving left and right, so they're affecting your x values. So it'd be like 2 plus minus 1, comma, -3. All right, now I gotta go get the focus. This is when you're gonna run that a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So it's gonna look like a squared is 1 plus b squared is 9 equals c squared. So you get c equals √10. So in terms of answering where the focus is, it's affecting your x values. So it's like 2 plus minus √10, comma, -3, like that. And then the last thing that you need to go get is your asymptotes. And so I'm just using that equation, y minus k, so y plus 3 equals, now comes the a over b or b over a. I need y over x, so that means this one's b over a. So remember, b is 3, not 9. So when you do this, it's like 3 over 1. And then x minus h, just like that. That's my asymptote. And I would be done there. And that's in terms of how difficult they get, that's a rather difficult problem. Oh, and don't forget your plus minus on your asymptote. That's really important. Okay, moving right along. All right, that brings us to number 22, when they just start giving you random information and expect you to be able to do all this. Well, I would not try to do that. I wouldn't try to do anything until I try to graph it first, the information that they give me at least. So vertice at plus minus 4, 0. So that means like here and here. It's the vertices. So that means it's going to open from those spots, which means the center's at 0, 0. Split the middle, right? Okay, and then they tell me the foci are at plus minus 6, 0. So here and here. Now, that's all the information they give you. All right. Where I would start with this is I would probably be looking at this equation right here. Focus is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And I'd also be looking at this equation right here. Because your ultimate goal is to get the equation, right? So I would probably write it down. I would be filling in my HK because we know the center now, it's at 0, 0. So really you can just put X and Y up top there because it's X minus 0, Y minus 0. I would be thinking, okay, to those red dots was 4, right? Well, that's your A value. So A squared would have to be 16. And then I would be thinking, okay, A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Well, A we knew was 4, which meant A squared is 16. We don't know B squared, but we do know C squared. C is this distance to that blue dot. Well, that's 6 away, right? Because this is at 6, this is at -6. So that means C squared is 36. And so you can solve this and get B squared equals 20. So B must equal root 20 plus minus root 20, which is plus minus 2 root 5. But you don't even really need to know what B is because you care for your equation what B squared is, 20. So my final equation here would be X over 16 minus Y over 20 equals 1. And then if they asked me for something like the asymptote on this, I'd be like, okay, y minus k equals, I need y over x, which means this is a b over a. So that is 2 root 5. So I guess you did kind of need to know that it was 2 root 5 over a, which was 4, and then x. And then you could reduce this 2 over 4 and call it root 5 over 2. So that's how I would have done that. Let's keep moving. 28. Okay, this time they're going to give me a vertice and foci just like normal, or just like I just did, I mean. But this time the center is not going to be at 0, 0. So let's see what this looks like. Okay, again, I would not try to do this without graphing it. So I've got vertices at 1, 2, -3, and +3. So I know this is vertical, and I know it's got to look something like this. Okay, split the middle to find your center. Your center here, aka your HK, is at 2, 0. So I would go ahead and be looking at this equation here, the vertical hyperbola equation, and I'd be like, okay, y minus k, so y minus 0 over a squared minus x minus h over b squared. Oh, sorry, these are squared as well. I don't know if I did that on the last one. Sorry if I didn't. Equals 1. Okay, so that's the start of my equation. Really, this y minus 0 squared, you could just call y squared. Like that. Okay, now, this distance, remember, this distance is a. So if a is 3, that means a squared would have to be 9 because this distance, a was 3. Cool. I still haven't even plotted my focus, and I have all of this information already. So your focus, 2, 3 is 3 up from there, and 1, 2, 3, 3 down from there. Remember, this distance from center to focus is c. So this distance, c, is 6. That's important because now you can just use this equation, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. You know what a squared is, it's 9. You don't know what b squared is, but you do know what c squared is. If c is 6, that means c squared is 36. So you just be like, okay, well, b squared has to equal 27. So b has to equal root 27, which is 3 root 3. All right, so in terms of your equation, you could put b squared here, which would just be 27. And so you would be sitting on your equation there, y squared over 9 minus x minus 2 squared over 27 equals 1. And so now they might ask you for like the equation of the asymptote. Well, you would still use y minus k, so y minus 0 equals, this one is going to be, I need y over x, so that's going to be a over b here. So a over b would be 3 over 3 root 3. Remember, a is not 9, a is 3. B is not 27, b is 3 root 3. And then x minus h would be x minus 2. And then you could reduce this and call it 1 over root 3 x minus 2. And if you're actually trying to do this correctly, you need to rationalize this 1 over root 3 by multiplying by root 3 over root 3. So you'd get root 3 over 3 x minus 2. That's how I would do that problem. Which brings us to the final problem, number 34. Okay, number 34. I'm not going to rewrite it. I'm just on the last one. So again, I would not try to do this without drawing it. So I have a vertices at 1, 2, and 1, negative 2, which means my center is here. The center's at 1, 0, also known as my HK. And I know it's vertical. But then they tell me that passes through this point 0 comma root 5. That's like, we'll call it here. And that's all the information they give us. Well, by them giving us this distance, they gave us a was 2. Which means if you're using an equation like this, the a squared is going to be 4. So that's a decent start for information. So I'd probably take this equation right here, and I'd be like, okay, y minus k. K is 0, so it's just y squared on top. I know a squared because a is 2, so a squared has to be 4, minus x minus h, so x minus 1 squared over, I don't know what b squared is. I know it equals 1. Okay, now they give us this point, 0 comma root 5. Well, this is an xy coordinate. And so what you can do with this information is just straight up plug it in for y and for x into this equation. So like y squared is root 5 squared, which is just 5. So this turns into 5/4 because I called root 5 right here for the y. And then x is 0, so 0 minus 1 is negative 1. Squared becomes positive 1 on top over b squared equals 1 over 1. And now you have an equation that you can go solve. So you need to kind of isolate this b squared part. I would minus 5/4. So now I'm sitting on negative 1 over b squared equals, Imagine this as 4 over 4. So this is going to be negative 1/4. Now from here, some people teach you to cross multiply to solve it. I teach that if one side of the fraction is the same, then you can just set the bottom equal to each other. B squared equals 4. B equals plus minus 2. We'll just call it 2. And really, you just wanted what B squared was anyways. So I'd go back here and I'd be like, okay, over 4. But I'll rewrite it. This entire equation would look like y squared equal or over 4 minus x minus 1 squared over 4 equals 1. This is my final equation. And then if they needed the asymptote, again, it's y over x. So this one would be a over b, but it wouldn't matter because they're the same number, but it'd be y minus k equals a over b. Don't forget your plus minus x minus h. So y equals plus minus 1, x minus 1. And that's this equation. All right, so that's the hyperbola for you. There's a lot going on, but if you remember this equation for asymptote and which one, if it's a over b or b over a, it's always y over x. So, and then you need to remember this equation for the focus. And you need to remember that a always comes first. And whichever x or y comes first tells you if it's vertical or horizontal. But if you can remember all that, and then remember when we were completing the squares here to redistribute the -1, which changes this number, the sign, then you're golden. So hope this video helped.